Welcome back, everyone, to the SportsLine Model Show. Happy Tuesday. We finally have the NFL Week 1 to bet on. We already had some college football last week, and we had a pretty good weekend. Let's bring in the stars of the show, Stephen, Jake, John, and Derek. Of course, we have our MLB Daily Picks for you today, and then we will head into our NFL Week 1 picks on top of some college football trends and what we think can help you through this weekend. So to get started, without further ado, we will head right into the MLB with John and Jake, and we will get right started here.
Yeah, so we won't talk about baseball too long today. We've got a ton of football finally. NFL started along with college football, so we want to save most of our time for y'all to get into that and ask questions about that. But we've got a couple MLB picks that we really like today. And the model really likes. The first one is the Dodgers on the money line against the Marlins. So the best line that you could find when I last checked a few minutes ago was minus 142 on DraftKings, although it has been going up and down. Interestingly enough, it opened around that, shot up to minus 148, and I believe minus 155 at one point, and then went all the way back down at minus 142 now. It's Clayton Kershaw against Jesus Luzardo. I mew, Clayton Kershaw is as consistent as it gets. You pretty much know exactly what you're going to get from him every time he goes out. Jesus Luzardo, on the other hand, is the exact opposite of that. He'll have a couple of very good outings, and then he'll randomly have a really bad outing, a couple bad outings in a row. All of a sudden, he'll have a good one again. So it's very hit or miss. But the main thing here is the Dodgers are 21-6 in their last 30 games, and they're coming off losing 3 of 4 games at home to the Braves. I think they really want to take their frustrations out on absolutely anybody right now. It just happens to be the Marlins, unfortunately. So I think they're going to come out strong. And then the other main thing here is the Dodgers are ranked 8th in the league in weighted on base average against lefties in the last 30 days, while the Marlins are ranked dead last. So the Marlins used to hit lefties really well. They've been doing it all season, but recently, last 30 days, worst in the league. So we really like the Dodgers in the money line here.
And if you are on Prize Picks, I saw that it's part of their Taco Tuesday promotion. They have Clayton Kershaw's strikeouts at 3.5. We have them at 6. So there's pretty good value there.
Yeah, I really like that taco square, whatever you want to call it. I have that in my Prize Picks play for today, and I definitely like that one. That's one of those where you kind of like it in the first place, and then it's discounted already, so you like to play it as opposed to getting on a play just because it's discounted.
Exactly.
Right. And while we're on the topic, yeah, Tay asking about if we like this game over under. Stephen, if you can point out where we have our projection on here.
Yeah, so this one's tough because I think the Dodgers are going to score a lot, but I don't really know about the Marlins. So if anything, I would like the Dodgers team total over. If you're going to choose any game over, I would go the over just because I think the Dodgers are going to score so much. But if you're going to choose a total, I would go Dodgers team total.
I'd probably stay off the total, honestly. But yeah, I'd lean anything. I lean Dodgers team total.
Or Marlins under team total is another option.
Yeah, not a bad play against Kershaw. And you know what you're going to get, like you said.
Yeah.
Right. Similar trend going on across the board for that game. We'll move over to another money line pick, Rays money line against the Red Sox. Jake, if you want to talk a little bit about that.
And this is our one Model A pick of the day. And the big thing with this is, we love Zach Eflin, and we love when the Rays are at home. But if you look at Zach Eflin's home stats, he's 10-4 at home this season. This over here, down here goes the last 2 seasons. But he's 10-4 at home this season with a 2.73 ERA. Compared to on the road, he's 4-8 with a 5.31. He just loves to play at home. Cutter Crawford actually has reverse stats. He's much better on the road than at home, but his role has been changing all year. He's been as a reliever, as a starter, so not all the stats are of Cutter Crawford starting. We shouldn't have Wander Franco projected in there. I just noticed that, so I'll get rid of that as soon as we finish this. But I think it's a good spot for the Rays. They lost yesterday. I think they bounced back with a win today.
Yeah, the Rays are also 7-2 against the Red Sox this season, including yesterday's loss. So they've been dominating the Red Sox pretty much outside of yesterday.
Exactly. I think I like it better because they lost yesterday. They came back. Yesterday was their first game following a road trip. Sometimes it takes you a game to adjust back to playing at home. And today is the day after that. So I like this even more because of that.
Mm-hmm. And as we go through, everyone feel free to keep putting chat questions for us to look at. Zach Phelps asking about the Orioles -1.5, right around even money today.
Yeah, I love anything Orioles. I like them on the money line. I'm on them on the money line. I figured I'd pay the juice. Ohtani's probably not going to be in today. Oblique injuries are one of the worst possible injuries you can have as a baseball player because you use your oblique for literally everything. So even just the slightest strain, pull, even feeling anything is not good. They also have no reason to play him, although it is the Angels, so they might still play him. But I mean, I think he should be out, and the Orioles team's on a roll right now. The Angels have one of the worst bullpens in the league. They just shipped off 3 extra relievers as well. So I think you can't go wrong with any Orioles play there.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like the model likes the Angels. Would you be able to explain a little bit why that is?
Well, I don't think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, the lineups aren't in yet. So does it not know if Ohtani, like it's
projecting Ohtani is playing.
Yeah, I'm assuming Ohtani is playing right now, which is why.
Okay. I see.
We'll definitely see some changing there as soon as, well, if he's out. He's definitely not,
right.
I'm assuming he's out. We don't know for sure, but we'll see.
Okay. Good to know. And then we got to move back over to Jake, who's been absolutely crushing these first run inning props. We have another one today with the Yankees and Tigers. No run in the first inning. It might be one of our first ones we've had in a while there. So what makes you think there is no runs today?
Yeah, so we actually, in the model, we don't really have value, but we almost always love yes run first innings, but we have this under 50% for no run first inning. So that's why I like this play. The Yankees are actually starting to hit it because they called up their younger guys. I tweeted the other day, I actually like watching the Yankees because they have these 20-year-olds. They started 6 players, 24 and under for the first time since 1932 the other day. And You see what happens when you start these young guys. You sweep the Astros on the road. But they're still going through some growing pains. Faedo's been used as a starter and as a reliever. He's been inconsistent, but if he's only pitching 1 inning as an opener, or depending on what his role is today, I think he should be able to get through that pretty easily. And then Garrett Cole is the Cy Young favorite in the AL, pitching for the Yankees. He's been really, really good this season. Besides that one start against Boston a couple starts ago, he's been great. So I like no run first inning here. It was at plus 105 this morning when I woke up, and I was all over that. And then it moved to minus 115. You get a minus 113 on FanDuel.
Nice. And while we're on the topic of the first run inning props, reminds me of we have last week's record. I want to show real quick just to show everyone where we've been with the MLB. 3-1 last Tuesday, 10-2 the past 2 Tuesdays on these MLB picks. So certainly be writing these down. And we're profitable in college football. 2-1 last weekend. We have more for that. But just wanted to show that quick so everyone is dialed in for these MLB picks. And we'll go with one last pick from Jake. We're going with a hits run RBI pick today. One of our first on this show too, I believe.
Yeah. So now that Dinger Tuesday is done, I figured I'd just give out a player prop. And this is from John's team, the Blue Jays. Davis Schneider has been absolutely on fire. If you look at the games he started, I think it's 13-2. He's hit the over 1.5 hits, runs, and RBIs. It's a crazy success rate there. Look, 12-3, so I was close. 80% has gone over, and look at that. Just he's on an absolute tear. His last game, he came in as a pinch hitter, so we don't include games that he didn't start. So if you look and you see 0-1, that's not included because he didn't start. But Davis Schneider's also facing a lefty. And this season against lefties, he's 10 for 25 with 5 home runs. I think he has like a 1,500 OPS against lefties this season. I know it's a small sample size, but I think this is a really good matchup for him against a lefty, and he's absolutely raking right now, and he's trying to earn a postseason roster spot.
Yeah, and when the Blue Jays face lefties, or at least right now, he's with Bo Bichette injured and Brandon Belt, who's usually in the middle of their lineup. David Schneider is usually the guy that jumps to second. So he'll be batting behind George Springer and likely in front of Vladdy. So that's plenty of opportunities for RBIs and runs as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, everything on that screen looks pretty enticing to take this player prop. We're going to stop there for our picks on the screen with the MLB, but Jake and John, as always, will be in the chat, so fire away with your MLB questions. But it is officially time for us to move over into NFL props. This is going to be exciting for us. First of three, let me get Steven in here with us. We have 4 NFL Week 1 picks for you guys. And of course, we have all the time to answer your questions. Whatever other games you want to hear about, we're certainly happy to talk about. But we'll start with our favorite 4, starting with the Chiefs covering the spread, -6.5. It's some places 7 now versus the Lions. That's because the model is projecting the score to be 32-22. So we have them covering this by 10 points. And a lot of this has to do with Detroit averaging under 20 points on the road. We know they're a great team. Offensively, people have seen. However, on the road is where they start to struggle.
Yeah, this is on a side note, I learned something about my team that they can't. I'm not sure if I'm proud of Jake and John for toughing it out through obvious illness, or I'm disappointed that they couldn't keep it together over a long weekend. One Labor Day, and they're shot. But anyway, good job, guys. Yeah, Detroit. 2 years ago when they weren't a very good team, they were even especially bad offensively on the road. They averaged 6 fewer points on the road than at home. The typical drop off is around 2 or 3 points. Detroit last year averaged 33 at home and just 19 on the road. So the model does weight home and away pretty significantly. And in this case, so that's why we don't see Detroit, despite the narrative of how good they are potentially offensively, hitting way over to the 24 that they need to cover. Now, Chris Jones being out, he could be worth quite a few points, but it's already kind of been baked into our projection. We probably have Detroit more at closer to 24 at this point because it's highly unlikely Jones is going to sign the next 24 hours, which is probably what he needs to get there. But I also like this is the fact that Kansas City, they do average fewer points at home because they're usually favored by a lot. They averaged 8 more points on the road last year, and then even 2 years ago they averaged more points on the road because Patrick Mahomes takes more upon himself when they're in a kind of must-win situation. So I kind of like the fact that if the Chiefs are playing without Jones and Mahomes feels like he's got to put up 35, 40 to win this, I have faith in him. So especially at 6.5, I kind of like that covering 7.
Yeah, so with Chris Jones actually playing, they're the number 1 team in the NFL in pressures. So with him out of the lineup, their touchdown interception ratio goes from 1.9 with him playing to 2.6. So almost 3 touchdowns that they're giving up when Jones is not there. That is a lot of touchdowns when Jones is not on that field. And so last year, they had arguably the easiest schedule against offenses last year. However, they were the 10th worst in offensive efficiency for their opponents. So even when Jones was playing there, they were, giving up a lot of points. And then also with Detroit, quiet as kept, they scored 28 passing touchdowns last year, which some people might not know of or think of. But yes, they were prolific in passing touchdowns, even though they only had one guy that was averaging over 5. Well, that for the whole entire year had 500 receiving yards. So
yes. No, we don't want to. Some people might be confused why we're kind of giving mixed messages, like we were picking Kansas City, but we're pointing out how important Chris Jones is. I think it's relevant here because the narratives, when they resonate with the influential bettors, the smart money, then you see that line move. And yeah, the line opened at 7 early in the summer. And it's the fact that it's still 6.5 and, the Chris Jones situation, the way it is and all is showing. And then based on our public data, is actually a higher percentage of people still backing the Chiefs. So it's kind of like, yes, despite the Jones issues and how much worse the Chiefs defense is without him, the smart money, including ourselves, is still liking the Chiefs.
Right. We had a question about the Raiders, who actually have, some situations going on in the locker room. But from what I believe, we do have a slight lean to the Vegas team total over and potentially to cover. I'll bring it over to the model, Steven, if you want to look at that.
Yeah, I mean, we really don't have any kind of extreme value. Our over percentage is 50% versus the consensus 44 line and 47% on the under. So that's not exactly earth-shattering with a 3% chance of a push.
Right.
Yeah, so, I wouldn't go. We do like Vegas. We do like the upgrades. We do think that, Garoppolo, while he's upright, Josh Jacobs is sort of happy with the 1-year contract. Devontae Adams is there, obviously, and they should have Jacoby Myers and Hunter Renfrow. So the sort of offset Waller being gone. So, and then Denver should be okay with a new coach and rejuvenated and thinner Russell Wilson.
Right.
Yeah. So the tight end for Denver, he's going to get more receptions than anything else because of all of the injuries to the wide receivers. And so they're going to have to bank on him. I forgot. I can't see this right now. I didn't pull it up on my screen. But they're going to be passing probably more to the tight ends because, they're thin at wide receiver. Unfortunately, they had like at least 3 to 4 wide receivers being injured. So, but I'm sure that Sean Payton will come up with a way to scheme their way into scoring points.
So could that be potential player props so we look into later in the week, looking at their tight ends?
Yes, that's what I'm looking at. I mean, I had one for the Chiefs game, but I'm like, it's the first game, and with Chris Jones not being there, I'm like, I don't know. Like Ramon St. John, Amon St. Brown. That was one with him going under 77 and a half receiving yards. So we have him at 56. Last year he averaged 10.9 receptions per reception. So the sports books are thinking that he's going to have at least 7 receptions in a game. But I mean, I don't know, because once he gets 13 targets in a game, he usually goes over that 70 points. So 70 receiving yards. So that's why I'm like, I don't know.
Well, we can move back over to a game we do have strong model value pick in. The Commanders to cover against the Arizona Cardinals, which will typically be a trend you'll start to see coming from us. We have the score projected at 26-16. A lot of this Commanders spread that we're confident in comes from them scoring over 23 points that the odds makers are implying.
Yeah. So like the odds actually down to 22.5 for the team total. Sam Howell, they're excited about him. He played pretty well in his limited action last year. But, the thing with Howell is if his freshman year at North Carolina was switched with his junior year, he probably would have been the first quarterback taken and potentially a first-round pick in a weak quarterback class. That was Kenny Pickett was the only quarterback drafted in the first round. So Howell had all the hype and talent potentially of a late first rounder. And so they got him in the 5th round. So and then Ron Rivera, the whole team is under a lot of pressure to win. And Jacoby Brissett played pretty well filling in for Watson last year. So you got to assume that if Brissett was actually a better option to win now, they would go with him. So going with Howell, I think, is a good sign that they have faith in him, that he has performed better than Brissett. And then the wide receivers, McLaurin got a little banged up in that preseason game against Baltimore, where they tried way too hard to end Baltimore's preseason win streak. Dotson's back in the lineup. I also want to point out Diami Brown, because he's a big play wide receiver who doesn't get a lot of action, but when he does, he's put up some huge numbers. One game last year, he had two catches for 100 yards and a couple touchdowns. He's Sam Howell's old college teammate, and they seem to have a lot of chemistry. So if you're in a desperate, deep league in fantasy and you need somebody in a flex spot, he's someone to keep in mind, especially if McLaurin is. And
then in the draft, he was. When Brown was being drafted, like all of the people were saying he had the best hands in getting the ball at the highest point. So since Howell knows about this, that's why he gets the ball a lot in the red zone area. So that's something to consider.
We also like Arizona. The fact that Arizona's, seems to be tanking. It's not a word that NFL teams like to use, but their defense has been trending down. A couple years ago, they allowed 22 points a game. Last year, they allowed 26.5, even though J.J. Watt had a career resurgence in his final year, and then he's retired. Isaiah Simmons didn't quite work out, and they traded him. So, Budda Baker, who's still there, had requested a trade early in the year. So, it's not a trending defense, at least positively. So kind of like Washington in this spot.
Right. And while we're on the
They're
topic,
also our survivor pick. Sorry.
Yeah. While we're on the topic of the Commanders against the Cardinals, I want to show you guys the NFL Survivor pool that we've created goes through all 18 weeks. And we want to show you guys the first 3 weeks as what we think you should take. This percentage shows their chances of winning them on the money line. But we like the Commanders. We're going to see a lot that we like whatever team's playing the Cardinals. We have a good chance of, being a good pick for Survivor, but especially the Commanders in week 1.
Yeah, this I looked at, if you want to show my screen for a second.
Sure.
What I have is and we'll try to answer any questions that you have in future weeks, because I know that we're probably no one's going to survive probably all year. But what I was looking for, especially in the early part of the year, is below average teams who are supposed to have particularly good weeks. Try to get them out of the way when you have confidence, and reserve kind of the teams that I trust for later in the year when you don't know how things are going, about which teams are surprisingly good and which ones are surprisingly bad. Love that Washington is a team that is, their win total for the year is only like 6.5. And so in our sims, they're winning 40% of their games. But in this week, they're actually 73%, leading the league in win percentage, even higher than Baltimore, who's a 10-point favorite. So this is the week to play Washington in our mind. Next week, I like the Giants. The early line is they're 4.5-point favorites at Arizona. Washington's a 7-point favorite this week right now at Arizona versus Arizona. And in week 3, Miami's a team that we've been down on, not because of their talent or how good they are, but because they're an extremely tough schedule. So the highest win percentage we have for Miami all season is actually this home game versus Denver. They're 3.5-point favorites in the early line. But I kind of like Miami in that spot at home. Just to still be pretty warm day versus Denver.
Right. And then just to touch, we'll touch on these every week, but just to touch on week 3, we're thinking you want to use Tua early before he, God knows what happens. Maybe he stays healthy, but you might as well get him done within week 3. And their schedule does get tough, as we've mentioned before in shows past, but we have strong value on using Tua in that week 3 spot while he's still healthy and 100%. So we'll move back over to our 4th NFL pick that we have prepared for you guys. The Seahawks to cover the 5 points against the Rams, projected score 27-18. Again, another team that we like this because this road team is not averaging many points on the road.
Yeah, for our points of our database in football, we go back a couple seasons, but obviously we weight the current season the most and the previous season more. So, in the Rams last year were a disaster offensively, especially, they went from averaging 27 per game on the road and at home in their Super Bowl season down to just 18 overall, but 14 on the road. And if you look at the current roster, Cooper Kupp is just less than a day ago, I believe, was at a specialist office trying to figure out why his hamstring's not healed. Stafford's a year older. We all know famously how little they worried about draft picks. So, I'm not a draft guru, and maybe Jake has some ideas, but I don't think they fixed a shaky offensive line that still hasn't replaced, the left tackle from 2 years ago in their Super Bowl team. Cam Akers, while he seems to be out of the doghouse, has yet to prove that he's, an elite back. He's not Todd Gurley 2.0. Or maybe he's Todd Gurley once Gurley got hurt and basically got benched, but he's not young Todd Gurley 2.0. So, you just got a team that just resembles on paper the one that was really struggling on the road. And I love Seattle's defense. They're a big addition. Devin Witherspoon, the draft probably is not going to play. And Jamal Adams is probably not going to play. But they still have the team that had Woolen last year, and at home with the 12th man, they allowed under 20 points per game. They were almost 10 points better in points allowed at home than they were on the road. So I think the Seattle crowd's going to be really, really up for this. They're going to rely on their running backs, Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet, to play ball control. Jackson Smith-Njigba is practicing. We'll see if he plays with that injured wrist. But the team has enough offensively to control the pace with the run game and let the defense and the crowd noise keep the Rams under 20.
Right. It feels a lot
Yeah,
more
so
like
if Cooper Kupp can't play, that's 33% of their receptions at that point. The next closest is their tight end Higbee at 19%. So with him out of the lineup, and then how well the defense of the Seahawks plays, especially their secondary, they're going to have a hard time moving the ball.
we got a few questions in the chat. One about Packers Bears, what we think about that one. I don't believe we had major value on it, but we might have something in
Yeah, I don't think a 0.4 difference is yeah. So if you look at my screen, so like the lines, the latest consensus lines that I'm seeing are Bears -1 and an over under of 43, and we have, after thousands of simulations, -1 and 42.6. So yeah, it's pretty much a push. Sorry about that. The NFL lines are so tight. That's why it's important. That's why one reason why we're doing this show on a Tuesday is to try to pinpoint the values that we do have early in the week, that 75 to 80% of them go away by kickoff, because I'd like to think it's the tremendous influence that we have in the gambling world, but it's also because a lot of people who are stats oriented and analytics oriented end up using the same numbers and looking at the same factors that we do. Our sim model just does it faster, so we kind of get to the answer instantly, whereas other people might take a day or two, but it's enough to influence the line. So that's why we try to come in early.
Right. And week one, of course, itself is tough because these lines have been out and moving for quite some time.
Exactly.
So we should deal with that later in the season. One final pick that we like that actually does have a lot of value. We like the Jets money line against the Bills. Now, if you look at our projected score, we do have Buffalo winning 22-21, but at that point, with such a close projection, you might as well take that money line with the plus money. You have the Bills, who has Von Miller out. Obviously, the Jets' offensive line looked a little scary in preseason, but since they don't have to deal with Von Miller, we like the Jets to be able to hang in this game.
Yeah, I mean, the Bills last year played, I believe, 8 games with Miller. They were averaging, not the Jets, the Bills were averaging around 3 sacks per game. Then he got hurt. They went down to 2. And it's not just sacks, obviously, it's pressures and everything else that goes on along that. Although when we have more time, I'll go on my diatribe on why pressures are not nearly as relevant as they were just a few years ago. And this is why the Giants are in trouble, because Wink Martindale specializes on pressures as opposed to giving the sack itself. But that's a side note.
Right.
The Jets, I think the reason why people aren't backing them solidly is because there's still some questions at running back. Like Dalvin Cook should be healthy, but he was a late camp signing. Breece Hall is running straight line 21, 22 miles an hour, but I think there's still some concerns whether his knee is as far as cutting and all those things. And then even though the offensive line doesn't have to deal with Von Miller, there's still the Jets offensive line. And I also point out to one thing, which is the Jets defense, they act like they're the 85 Bears or 2000 Ravens. They're very, very good, but they're actually more vulnerable defending the run than you think. Last year they allowed nearly 140 yards a game and 4.5 yards per carry, which is not very good. And they ended some games, like Miami ran from 162 in the last week, Seattle almost 200. So, for Quinnen Williams, CJ Mosley, and up the inside, you would think they were be a little more stout defending the run. James Cook, people a lot of high on him in fantasies, up to the top 20 running back in our fantasy league. Obviously, Josh Allen is a runner. Damian Harris is a potential goal line back and capable. They even have guys like Latavius Murray on the bench. So there could be a weakness for the Jets defense running the ball that no one really talks about.
Yeah, so with the Bills, when Miller is not there, then their touchdown interception ratio is 1. But when Von Miller is not there, it goes to almost 2. And so at the end of the season where Von Miller wasn't there, there was the bottom half of the league. So with him not being there, that connection between Rodgers and Garrett Wilson, which is unbelievable. If you looked at any other highlights or any other games the preseason game and the Hard Knocks series, they have an unbelievable connection. So yes, the offensive line stinks, but if Rodgers can get the ball out, they should be able to move the ball on them. That's why we like the Jets and money line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if anyone has any more NFL questions, of course, keep putting them in the chat. But it looks like we're going to move over to back over to college football. Now we have something interesting here. I'm going to bring Jake in to talk about it because this is, essentially his project that he's been working on. But the stability model, talking about returning production, returning a lot of quarterback starts, coaching tenure and talent, which we've talked about. Those teams who have that advantage are covering the spread quite significantly against their opponents. Sorry, Jake, I got you on mute. Go ahead.
So these are all the games where I examined, and when you subtract the coach differential in years, the quarterback differential in years, the team talent differential in years, that one team has either an advantage in all of those categories or is even in one or two of those categories. And teams with advantage went 5-1 against the spread last week. This week, there's, I think, 12 or 13 cases where teams have an advantage this week.
Yeah, so I love this. Sorry. I love this trend because one thing we're trying to accomplish with the show is try to explain the value of the SportsLine product. And, we do have our A-rated picks that if you are someone seeking picks from a solid capper, that's our equivalent of it. But the real value, the real aim of the SportsLine product was to find the situations where people with their own picks, their own systems, their own resources could cross-reference them with our model picks and then identify the ones that we think are the best plays because they're pulling from different data sets. So I love that the model is heavily based on statistics, and one limitation in college football is a lot of times the statistics aren't that relevant from the past when you have so much transfer and turnovers across the board. So I love when a system like the one Jake's working on here makes logical sense in my mind that a team with more stability and returning experience covers the spread, especially large spreads like these. I love when that matches with what our stats have because they have two different sources kind of finding the same thing. So yeah, sorry, that's my
no.
So the next,
great. So if you look at this, these are the teams in week 2 that we would consider to have this stability advantage. The ones with the blue asterisk next to it are the ones that the SportsLine model also agrees with. So not only does the stability model like it, but so does the SportsLine model. So these are stronger values that we like. Maybe not necessarily all A picks, but stuff that our model agrees with on top of Jake's stability model.
I will add, Michigan would have fit into this category, but Harbaugh is suspended, so technically he's not coaching. So they didn't count the last 2 weeks because of that.
Right.
Yeah.
And we got
the one that. Yeah. Go ahead. No, I was just going to point on this list. There are some. The A-rated pick that we love is the Maryland game at home versus Charlotte, and Tua's brother usually puts up some huge numbers against subpar teams. And Maryland does usually does great against bad teams, especially at home. But that's the one that's an A pick on both on our system and the stability model.
Right. We got a question about our marquee matchup, Texas Bama spread. We are all over the Bama spread, which hurts me to say as a Georgia fan. So I'll let you guys take it from here to save myself the pain.
Yeah, I'll let Jake. As we talked about this earlier, the big difference is, we have almost a touchdown. We have a touchdown difference. We got Bama at 14 because it's basically 90% of that's coming from Bama being projected for 37 points versus a team total of 31.5. So ordinarily that could probably be enough for A-rated value if this was a year ago when we had Bryce Young and some proven stuff. So, the model sees Bama last year. Okay, they lost Bryce Young, it's going to downgrade him, but then it sees that they only played Middle Tennessee State, but they did cover almost a 40-point spread, and Milroe, looked the part, and he ran really effectively, and he passed efficiently. So there was nothing from week one that was going to make it look like this huge drop off. So that's why we have a lot of sim value, but not necessarily personal confidence.
Yeah, so Milroe, I think I saw statistics where he is the only quarterback in Alabama history with 3 passing touchdowns and 2 rushing touchdowns in the same game, which is that's pretty crazy to think about. I definitely lean Bama. My stability-based model has Bama winning 31-24, so right along with the spread there at -7. I just watched Quinn Ewers last week, and I was not impressed even against Rice. So that's scary that he's going against Alabama after not looking that great. I think his numbers were a lot of his good big numbers were on quick screens to Xavier Worthy, where Xavier Worthy got 10, 15 yards after the catch. I don't think Worthy, even though he's a beast, he'd probably be a first-round pick. I don't think he's going to be able to do that against Alabama. So that scares me. Ewers missed a lot of downfield passes in that game.
One thing that hurts their confidence, is that there are injuries at starting corner for Alabama.
Yeah, they have 2 cornerbacks who are questionable for this game, but their backups are 5 stars at Alabama.
Yeah.
And so I don't love this as an A pick, even though we have probably close enough value to have an A pick here. But I would definitely lean Alabama. I saw that Tay likes Alabama team total over, and I like that as well. I think that's probably the play here. That's what's driving the value.
Right. And we'll move to a game quick. I believe we were talking about before the show with Northwestern, who had a tough weekend. Do we see any value in this game here for this weekend?
Who are they against?
UTEP, our favorite team, UTEP.
Oh boy.
Gosh, yeah. Geez, 2 teams that look like garbage in the first 2 weeks. Well, one thing that was I wanted to point out about Northwestern is we didn't point it out in our model show. So again, to shield the subscribers, we should be signing up to SportsLine because we did have A-rated value in Northwestern Rutgers, and that even when the line I was writing Jacob early morning. I was like, hey, that line's going down to 38.5 as it was ticking down from the 40. And, he held tight. So I wasn't sure if we want to downgrade that as the line value went away. But we got that pretty easily. So Northwestern, obviously without hazing, they're not tough enough to move the ball very well. But so we don't have any, we have value on UTEP. They should have easily won, frankly, in week 1 at Jacksonville State. And they did manage to beat Incarnate Word after having that relatively close. But Jake, how are we feeling about UTEP now?
I mean, they're so bad on the road and compared to at home. I think I'd go with the under here. I think it's going to be an ugly game to watch. I don't think I'm going to I'll watch this game, maybe a little, but I'm going to dread watching this game. And like you said last week with Northwestern Rutgers, I felt like Kevin Costner in that game. I was like, under no matter what the spread was in that game, I was going under. And luckily, Rutgers used the new rule to their advantage and just ran out the clock in the 4th quarter. Because I think if they kept trying, they could have put up plenty of points in that game. But I'd probably just stay off this game, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. And another quick question in the chat asking about the Notre Dame game, if we have value there this week.
Let's see.
In Notre Dame, NC State.
Yeah, not looking like that. We have some value on the under. It looks like the public 68% is on the over, so the line's bumped up from 50 to 51.5. So it's not an A-rated pick, but we have 47 as our total. NC State's the lines come down to from Notre Dame -9 to just -7.5. We have value on NC State to cover. Let's see. Don't like going against
Notre Dame just because Brendan Armstrong was the only player on NC State that had any success running the ball. They did not run the ball well, and if he's forced to run the ball, I think he's going to take a couple big hits early in that game against Notre Dame. Has a pretty good defensive line with Riley Mills. I would definitely lean Notre Dame in this game. I'm not sure with the spread. I'd probably not too much value here.
what it's coming down to is going back to last year's NC State's, how's their defensive production? Jake, do you have that? So last year, NC State allowed just 17 points a game at home, more than a touchdown better than what they did on the road. You couldn't run against them, under 3 yards per carry allowed. So they were just completely stuffing the run at home, which is probably the big reason why we have Notre Dame at 26.5 points versus odds implied 29.5. And, so, it always scares me to go against my man, Sam Hartman.
NC State returns just 49% of their defensive production from last year. So it's on the lower end.
But they did play. I mean, they played UConn, and UConn was sort of an ascending team. It was an ugly game. But
the thing that stood out in that game is UConn was handling.
They ran the ball.
They were handling NC State's line on both sides of the ball. Like they were getting pressure on Armstrong, and they were able to run the ball somewhat. So that scares me, especially since Notre Dame has Audric Estime on as their lead running back. Has been pretty good this year. He was really good last year. So that scares me from watching NC State last week against UConn.
So the 1.5 increase in over-under and to go along with the 1.5 change in spread means the public or the smart money is on NC State to score more than the opening odds would have implied. So there's something deep. How Notre Dame's returning defense? How are they looking?
I think Notre Dame is on the higher end of returning production, especially on defense.
A lot of this are small sample sizes, but on the road last year they gave up a ton of points, over
72%. Or that's
so 72%. That team, they allowed almost twice as many points on the road as they did at home last year. So that's kind of driving what I think is going on with NC State, is who averaged 6 more points at home than on the road. So I think that's what's causing the sentiment that NC State might score 24, 25 and lose by a touchdown as opposed to being held to 20 or less.
Mm-hmm. And then I just want to say one thing. Scott said, can the Huskies legit win the Pac-12? I think they absolutely can. I think USC's defense is a little scary watching them against San Jose State. I wouldn't buy into anything against Nevada because Nevada is just terrible. But I think that Washington's offense with Michael Penix looked really, really good, especially against Boise. They're throwing the ball deep at will, which scares me that USC might not be able to defend them. With Roman Dunze and Jalen McMillan, that might be the best wide receiver core in all of college football between those two guys.
I don't know if one thing I wanted could bring up is briefly the week after week 0 and 1, the rule change impact. And again, the sample size is questionable. And overall, the number of plays was only down an average of 1 play per team. But that's a little misleading. It's circular to say this, but when it's significant, it's significant. So this sample includes 97 teams that, played an FBS opponent this week, comparing their 2022 play averages versus last year. And teams that rushed, actually didn't, that passed a decent amount, at least 45%. Their number of plays was down around 2. And many more so is something like 32 out of 48 teams, 32 out of 50 teams saw significantly fewer plays. And those teams with fewer plays, they were on average down a huge amount. Talking like 9 plays per. So I think that the rule change is impacting certain teams significantly. A quarter of the teams are seeing a really big drop off in plays. So it's something to keep in mind going forward. I think that it hasn't translated necessarily to more unders, because I think in some cases it works against the offense or the defense and sort of balances out. So interestingly, the actual scoring is up slightly, but the number of plays is down.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's already a pretty great trend. Obviously, as we get a bigger sample size, we'll continue to update you guys on that and how strongly we feel, what specific teams that will start to affect. I want to take one more chat question before we head out. Talking about Vandy at Wake Forest, the spread is 10, I believe. Do we see any value there for Vandy to cover?
Yeah, we actually.
We like Wake here. And the thing is that Dave Clawson at Wake, he's had a history of just producing quarterbacks once their top guy leaves. Sam Hartman came after what's his name? We transferred to Georgia, Jamie. I forget his last name, but he emerged after he transferred to Georgia, and Mitch Griffiths looked pretty good last year when he had to fill in for Sam Hartman. He looked pretty good so far this season, even though he just played Elon in week 1. But I think this could be a really fun game. This could be an underrated game. It's 10 a.m. for Vandy, this game. So it's 10 a.m. Central Time. This game kicks off 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So it's an early game, which it's college kids, so it definitely could affect Jamie Newman. Thanks, Nick. I think this could be an interesting game since it's such a weird time slot. But I think I kind of lean the over personally.
Yeah.
But
we have so our sim and the odds have pretty much exact same point to over Vandy at 23.5. So the slight value on the over and Wake is coming from them projected for 36.5. Sorry, over versus 34. You look at Vandy last year, they average allowed 36.5. Hawaii was an impressive cover in week 0. And I don't know, what did Hawaii do? And they played a second game.
Hawaii lost to Stanford, I want to say like 37-25, something like that.
So, but so maybe Hawaii's offense isn't horrendous, but they allowed 28 to Hawaii. Probably not
I moved the ball pretty much at will against Vandy.
And Wake again, it was with Hartman, but this is a team that was really prolific scoring at home last year, over 40 a game in 6 games. And I trust Jake's scouting.
So if you are a Vandy fan, you can just at least root for the points and not necessarily have to go against your team there. But that looks like all the chat questions we have for college football. If you guys want to add anything else.
No, just that we're trying to focus on the games that people care about for the show. But at SportsLine, there are like 6 or 7 really strong A-rated plays. And again, a lot of the lines tend to move. Even Mackenzie's what doesn't want to rub it into Iowa fans, but she was all over that Utah State covering against Iowa. And the line we got was plus 25, and that was bet down to 23.5, and it looked like it could get close there. The other game we had was a strong value on Western Kentucky, and that was at 11 when we did the show, and it moved to 12 or 12.5 by kickoff. They covered that. So there is some value to getting in on these early, and I don't think any of the A picks that we have right now have significant injury issues and weather concerns this time of year. So it might be useful to get in on some of those picks before you lose value.
Right. And one more question from the chat. We moved the Commanders from a pick to a B pick. If you want to touch on that quick.
It's such a subtle. It could, when we're running like 10,000 simulations, it could be like a sim could be off by 0.001%, 0.02% and change, and just from a sampling error and drop a pick down from a B to an A. So I think that's what happened in this case. We pointed this out. A reason I would definitely still take Washington, because you do get that 7-point spread. There's Arizona's only covering in 42% of the sims. So why it moves, it can be just the slightest change in a line. And I don't know what the juice is necessarily on -7. If it's moved into more of a Washington -120 type situation, that could have moved it as well.
Right. So yes, sometimes it's something minute like that, but sometimes our own expert opinion will override that, and we still see it as one of our stronger plays for this weekend. So again, through the week, someone was asking about player props. Obviously, as those come out, we'd love to be active on Twitter with you guys, keep you updated through the week. So, whatever we can help you guys with, we're happy to. Hopefully, we'll be getting some of that content out. Look for me out on social media talking about trends, and ask us questions on Twitter all through the week. So we're hoping for another great weekend of football. Again, thank you everyone for showing up, and we will see you guys on Tuesday.